So, how do we make green-grey infrastructure, the leaky basins and spongy cities referred to in this title, happen? I want to share with you, through a quick tour around various sites around the world, our experience of what has worked and what we found challenging. So hopefully you'll find it interesting. But what is green-grey infrastructure? The World Bank referred to this as next generation infrastructure. Infrastructure that can enhance system performance. Infrastructure that can achieve better outcomes for communities. In their report, they argue that by incorporating nature into the design of mainstream grey infrastructure, we enhance system resilience and potentially we lower cost. And if we are to take a more integrated view, we need a holistic framework within which we operate. So it's a framework we use at Arup. We call it our Design with Water framework. But it's a framework that puts an integrated water cycle at the heart of a number of other interdependent systems, whether that's energy, carbon, economy, or whatever. And in moving forward with a more integrated approach, we need to rethink assets. We need to rethink how we think about flood resilience in a more integrated way. How does flood resilience work in the context of a wider water system? We need to rethink stewardship, how we manage those assets, taking a total design approach. What wider benefits can flood resilience bring other than purely resistance? And we need to think value, recognizing that when we invest in green-grey assets, there are potentially wider outcomes that have a value. So I'm going to start off looking at river flooding. I'm going to take you to Peru and the UK. So we've now been working in Peru for the last 5 years, delivering program and technical assurance across a massive reconstruction program following the El Nino event of 2017. That event, which happened in the northern coastal region, caused a devastating impact on the region. Mudslides, landslides, and an estimated 1.1 million people were impacted. We have been delivering a technical assurance program through the delivery of 78 schools, 80 new hospitals, but of relevance here is the delivery of infrastructure resilience to cities and to rivers, an estimated capex of around about $7 billion going in to protect communities. And this protection involves grey infrastructure, storing water upstream to slow the flow. It involves building embankments and river walls to divert flows around communities. And it involves the delivery of large channels to divert flows around communities for discharge into the Pacific. And at the time of taking on the opportunity, we were very keen to promote a green-grey approach to the implementing agency. The rationale for that approach was clear: to enhance system performance, to reduce cost impacts, to generate wider benefits. And importantly, we were keen to have an impact at scale, working across the 17 river basins. But we were working with a client who had little knowledge of this approach and who needed convincing. We needed to not only convince the clients, but also engage the supply chain. So we developed, in collaboration with the client, extensive technical guidance to support the delivery of this approach. We undertook extensive stakeholder engagement with the supply chain to raise awareness of the approach. And we undertook detailed analysis at a basin level to understand the impact of what we're proposing in terms of not only flood resilience, but also wider benefits like carbon and biodiversity. So where are we now with Peru? We've had a number of successes. We have convinced a client that it needed some convincing that this new approach is worthwhile. We have developed technical guidance that supports the implementing agencies in delivering this approach. And we have engaged the supply chain and raised awareness of this approach with the local supply chain. But we've also had a number of challenges. Dealing with a client who's under a lot of pressure, that tends to revert to what they know when that pressure hits, so going back to traditional solutions. Understanding the delivery models for delivering this kind of infrastructure, because it takes different skills and approaches to deliver this as opposed to grey infrastructure. And also understanding and identifying ownership and management models for this grey infrastructure once it's in. So now I want to take you from Peru to a small town in northern England, Stockton-on-Tees in the UK. Here, we were working on a flood scheme where phase one had already been developed, a traditional grey infrastructure scheme that delivered a protection of around about 1 in 75 years for most of the town. In developing phase two, we were keen to push for a more integrated approach. We used this nature insight tool here that we developed alongside Scalgo that allows you to rapidly identify and evaluate the opportunities for nature-based solutions, in this case, natural flood management, at scale and quickly. This meant that we were able to get green infrastructure opportunities really ingrained in the wider design process, so that early engagement was key. As a result of that, we were able to identify significant areas for upstream storage of water and infiltration. We increased the protection in the town from 1 in 75 to 1 in 100. And we were able, through the robust evidence base that Scalgo tool gave us, to secure funding from the government to implement the scheme, which is the first of its kind in the UK. And then stormwater. How can we take this green-grey approach to the management of stormwater? So Shanghai is a city shaped by water, a city of 15 million people. But as a result of rapid urbanization and a changing climate, it is increasingly struggling with the management of stormwater. So in 2018, the mayor at the time launched an international competition to develop what he referred to as an innovative and implementable master plan for managing stormwater in this city. And Arup was successful in winning that commission. It was key that we were able to get early analysis of the city to enable us to develop a robust evidence base for developing the blue-green-grey approach. So we used machine learning of aerial photography effectively to identify a number of urban typologies across the city at scale. We then took these typologies and developed blue-green-grey responses at each district within the city, and then these were integrated up into an overall master plan. The result is an integrated master plan for the city. I think it's worth noting that as we were developing this master plan, we went through extensive peer review and challenge from a number of experts across China. So it's been pushed quite a bit. So the output is a blue-green-grey master plan that achieves significant cost savings over the grey approach. We actually undertook some pilot testing of the master plan in certain parts of the city that reinforced the approach that we're taking was right. And we have generated, through our stakeholder engagement at the time, to quite a cynical crowd, I think, some enthusiasm and ambition to take the master plan forward. Now, the reality is the master plan has been taken forward in parts, but similar to Peru, there have been issues around leadership, issues around investment priorities, issues around funding that have meant that it's stalled a bit to date. But just speaking to Chinese colleagues last week, we are aware of a renewed energy coming back into that master plan, so we're keen to see it push forward. And then finally, back to the UK, to Mansfield. Here we were, which is a city of 120,000 people in the UK. Here we were approached by the water utility, who wanted a whole town blue, green, grey strategy developed to manage stormwater. As with Shanghai, we used our machine learning algorithms to rapidly assess and characterize the city so we could get an early definition of what the opportunities were within the city. A key facilitator of this scheme was the business case. We undertook a total value assessment of the opportunity using benefits mapping to identify the wider outcomes, evaluate them, and bring them into the business case. That business case was key to enabling the water utility to secure £75 million of funding to take the scheme forward. In addition to the innovation around identifying opportunities, along with our partners, we developed a number of algorithms that would automatically cite and assess potential interventions across the city really rapidly. Now that was important for us because it meant we could get those facilities into the strategic asset decision-making planning early so that they could be fully incorporated. So that rapid approach was key. And what has been, what the outcome of this is one of the largest green-grey retrofits ever undertaken in the UK. 20,000 interventions across the city, storing the equivalent of 23 Olympic-sized swimming pools to help manage stormwater. So to conclude, I think we need to do a number of things to make these approaches easier to take forward. Around stewardship, we need more integrated governance across the whole water cycle. We need to think about planning and policy and regulation. We need to think about developing business cases and designs, but also we need to think about what operation and maintenance look like. From an assets point of view, I think getting access to high quality data that allows you to look at scale is key for these green-grey approaches, and allows you to look at scale rapidly, because you want these approaches to be integral to the design-making process. I think also around assets, we need to think about delivery models for green-grey infrastructure as opposed to just grey infrastructure. There are challenges there that we need to work with the market to deliver, and we need to think about operation and maintenance. And then finally, value, as I've hopefully as articulated, there are opportunities to create value through these approaches, and then we need to understand how we can capture that value and maybe use that value in terms of attracting funding or delivering wider outcomes. Thank you very much.
Great.